Welcome to Best in Class. My name is AJ Madden. I help individuals and organizations become best in class at what they do. Very excited to introduce today's guest, someone who's been a great mentor of mine, someone who's given me some tremendous career and business advice, as well as some incredible life advice. Someone I appreciate very much, Dr. Jeffrey Pfeffer, who is a professor of organizational behavior at the Graduate School of Business, Stanford University, where he has taught since 1979. Stanford is widely regarded as the #1 business school in the world. Dr. Jeffrey Pfeffer received his BS and MS degrees from Carnegie-Mellon University and his Ph.D. from Stanford. He has presented seminars in 40 countries throughout the world, as well as doing consulting and providing executive education for numerous companies, associations, and universities. He is in the Thinkers 50 Hall of Fame. He is the author or co-author of 16 books, including the instant classic, which we'll discuss today, 7 Rules of Power. Jeffrey, welcome to Best in Class. Honored to have you.
Well, I'm honored to be on the show because I always try to make the students that I teach best in class.
Oh, amen, amen. And that's a true story. And if you have the opportunity to work with Dr. Pfeffer one-on-one or bring him into your organization, I know he's pretty booked up, but if you ever have the opportunity to work with Dr. Pfeffer, it will not only be career changing for you, it will be life changing. Now, we will talk about today's book. Today, we'll talk about his book, 7 Rules of Power. To me, it's an absolute must read. If you have not read this book, there is no way you are maximizing your career success. In my opinion, there's 0% chance. Also, if you're a leader, there's no way you are leading at your best until you study Dr. Pfeffer's work, 7 Rules of Power. I don't say that about many books. It's a must-read book for me. I also consider it what I call on a short list of the roadmap of reality books. If you don't understand power dynamics, at this level, you're going to have a hole in your map of reality this big, right? You will have a lot of unnecessary stress and you will have much less career success than you should have, most likely. So, Dr. Pfeffer, my first question, we'll go over some of these 4 rules from the book. First rule, it's rule number 1, get out of your own way. Maybe my favorite rule of all. I think it's a keystone rule. If you don't do this, you'll never be as good at the other 6 rules. So what are 2 or 3 best practices in terms of getting out of your own way?
Well, I think you need to lose the idea that you need to be authentic to yourself. I think, there's a lot of discussion about authenticity, but I think that discussion is misplaced. It's way too egocentric. You need to be authentic to what the people you are leading need from you. So if you've had trouble with your significant other, or your children are giving you difficulty or not doing what you think you want them to do, or you're depressed for whatever reason, there's maybe been a personal loss or something, you still have to show up in a way that the people who are working for you want and need you to, regardless of how you're feeling at the moment. So the first rule of getting out of your own way is to understand that as a leader, you are actually responsible for and to the people that you're leading, and that you're not necessarily responsible to share with them every issue that you got in your life or every feeling that you got. You need to give them what they need from you, which is mostly confidence and a sense that that together you can be successful. So that would be my first tip. The second tip would be, many people suffer, a surprising number of people suffer. Even people at Stanford Business School, the most selective business school in the world, suffer from what is called imposter syndrome. They think that they are the admissions mistake. They think in the company that they are the hiring mistake. And so they are reluctant to lean in to their power. They're reluctant oftentimes to participate in class or in a company in discussions. They are reluctant to actually be as forceful and as an advocate for their ideas as they should be. So you need to get over imposter syndrome. And probably the best way to do that is to look pretty clinically at the people at your level and higher up and ask yourself, are they actually that much better than me? And when the answer to that is no, then you need to participate as an equal, not as some, body who thinks that they don't really fit or belong. So those would be my two most important uh, pieces of advice for getting out of your own way. And AJ, I agree with you. If you don't get out of your own way, you're not going to be able to do much else.
Mhm. That's right. Thank you. Rule number 3, appear powerful. Acting and speaking with power. What are 2 or 3 best practices from there? Acting and speaking with power.
Well,
Appearing powerful.
yeah, I think, I think her name is Vanessa Friedman, or maybe it's a different person. But anyway, there is a style author in the New York Times who often writes actually in the style section of the New York Times. But she will talk about how people show up in terms of their dress. The Oscars, the red carpet, obviously, but also how Melania Trump dresses, how Donald Trump dresses, how various executives dress. There's been endless comments on the changing appearance of Mark Zuckerberg. And whatever you think about those particular examples, the general point is an important one. People respond to how you look. So, my late wife would say to me, when you show up at a place, you need to be dressed one level better than the audience. And so I think you need to look I think you need to look good. My friend Dana Carney, who's writing a book on body language, would say if you look good, people will respond to you more positively. You will feel better about yourself. So she, of course, after Kathleen died, took me to a store that sells Bruno Cucinelli, and we spent, the gross national product of several foreign countries on sport coats. But the point, oh, you don't have to spend as much as Bruno Cucinelli, but in any event, in any event, I think the idea of looking good so that and feeling if you look good, you'll feel better about yourself. You'll act with more confidence, and that could be dress, clothes, shoes, hairstyle. In the case of women, or maybe even men, makeup, whatever. So if you're going to be on a TV show, even if you're a man, they're going to put makeup on you and do all kinds of things so that you look. Yeah, I think you want to look good. I think that's very, very important in how you show up, and people will respond to you accordingly. I said the second thing is you need to master the principles of body language. Dana Carney's published an article on this in the California Management Review. She's writing a book on this called Tell. There's a literature on how to show up in a powerful fashion. Amy Cuddy has her very, very popular TED Talk called Presence. My friend and colleague Deborah Grunfeld has a YouTube talk on acting and speaking with power. So my second tip would be to go watch those. Go watch Amy Cuddy, go watch Deborah Grunfeld, go read Dana Carney's article on body language in the California Management Review, and implement what they tell you to do.
Thank you. Dr. Pfeffer recommended those videos for me to watch, and they're all outstanding. I think they're must watch to understand exactly what he's talking about. So look those up for sure. Also, as you listen to Jeffrey's advice, it's not only great career advice, it's not only great leadership advice, it's also great life advice, in terms of self-confidence and self-worth, and also just moving through the world better and easier, I believe. So everything in the book, the 7 Rules book, is also, there's great life advice in there as well. Let's see. Rule number 4, build a powerful brand. 2 tips on building a powerful brand. Your 2 greatest hits favorites.
Well, first of all, you need to understand that you need to build a powerful brand. I think most people do not think about branding themselves. They don't think about a succinct statement that describes who they are and why their background makes them particularly well suited to doing whatever job they are doing or aspire to do. And so I think that my first word of advice is take the concept of personal branding seriously, and think about, if people were to describe me or you or the listeners to this podcast, how would they describe them? And by the way, if you do not take control of your brand, someone else will. You'll have a brand that will be either diffuse, or you'll have a brand that somebody else or some other organization has created for you. So you need to know that my first word of advice is to take branding seriously. And my second word of advice is that once you've built a statement, AJ Madden, who's doing this interview, has a couple of fabulous statements and a couple of fabulous brand statements. And my encouragement for AJ or for anybody is to make sure that somebody besides your immediate family knows about those statements. So in other words, get exposure. Get exposure to what you stand for. Get exposure to how you think about what you're trying to accomplish. So AJ, why don't you give us, I know I'm not supposed to be interviewing you. It's a wonderful opportunity. Give us a couple of statements that you use to describe who you are and what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for asking. I'm a high performance coach for the ultra successful.
There you go.
That's one thing I do.
And so what I would encourage AJ to do is to get this idea of the high performance coach for the ultra successful associated with his name in as many forms as possible.
That's right. That's right. It's yeah, that was a big one for me. You've helped me really get clarity on who I am and what my brand is, and to tell my story over and over again. You've described it as take as many shots on goal as possible. Tell your story over and over and over again. Another thing
and as many forms as possible. Absolutely.
In as many forms as possible, every which way. Now, the goal is also to offer the world's premier training for first-time CEOs, and you have to be able to say that about what you're doing, and you've got to be able to do the push-ups that lead up to that, so you can actually get the results that you're talking about. But that's only half of it. You have to be able to brand yourself, and as you describe, in a simple way, a simple, memorable way. Why are people so afraid to brand themselves and put themselves out there and say, I offer the world's premier training for first-time CEOs? Why are people afraid to say things like that?
I think people have been taught to be modest and not self-promote. I don't understand why people turn on the TV and you see Mercedes promoting itself, and you see Coca-Cola promoting itself, and you see every drug in the world promoting itself. And I don't understand why they think it's fine for companies to do it, but it's somehow inappropriate for them to do it. So I think people believe somehow they're not supposed to toot your own horn, or whatever the expression is. But if you don't articulate who you are and what you stand for and what you're good at to the world, other people are probably not going to do it for you. There's a saying in the Bible, God helps those who help themselves. I think people are likely to repeat your brand to the extent that you articulate it to them. But if you don't articulate it to them, how can they repeat it? Because they don't know what it is. Most people are pretty bad minders.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right. One of my favorite things that I've ever learned from you is for people to get out of their own way is to imagine they're doing it for others.
Yep.
Can you explain that? You're going to explain it better than I just did.
No, actually, you've explained it quite well. There is evidence that suggests that people are more willing to engage in the power tactics that I describe in 7 Rules of Power. And they're more likely to do everything that you and I are talking about, to the extent that they believe they're not doing it for a selfish purpose, but they're doing it to help they're helping the collective. They're helping other people. So when Deborah Liu was still at Facebook, now called Meta, and ran a project that was worth about 16% of the company's revenue, was mentioned in the S1, she and her team got almost no credit for that. And she will tell you that while she stayed, almost everybody on that team left. So, it's not when she then did a second product for Facebook, and she made sure everybody in the organization knew about it. The difference was she wasn't doing it for herself, but she understood that if people at Facebook did not understand the work and the accomplishment of the people on her team, not only would she suffer, but the team members would not get any recognition. And in fact, they would leave. So you are, so to the extent that you are, articulating what you've accomplished, it is not just for you, it is for the people who helped you accomplish that.
Hmm. Well, Dr. Pfeffer, in my experience, his mission has been to put the rules of power in the hands of good people. And I've seen him do this over and over again. I know that's important to him, to put these rules of power into the hands of good people who have good intentions, who work harder and trying to make the world a better place. So if you have any apprehension about using the rules of power or what Dr. Pfeffer's intentions are, put them aside and think about it in terms of what good can I do in the world with these rules of power. Now, these rules of power are neutral, just like a scalpel is. It can save a life, a scalpel, or it can end a life. It can harm somebody. So it's up to you how you use them. But you can definitely use them for good, for the good of society and the good of your family and the good of others. I think that's important to think about, with these rules. Rule number 5, network relentlessly. I think this one's really, really important. And so many people are scared to do it. They don't like the word network, or they don't understand what it is. So can you give us your favorite best practices in terms of networking?
I think the most important principle in networking is that, the people, we tend to spend most of our time. First of all, we don't do it. So my first word of advice is spend more time. If leadership is getting things done through other people, the more other people you know, the more you'll be able to get done. The second thing is when we engage in social interactions, our natural tendency is to engage with people with whom we are comfortable. And the people with whom we are comfortable are the people that we know the best because we're the most familiar with. Our friends, our family, our close work colleagues, etc. The problem with that is that your friends and family, the people to whom you are strongly tied at work, tend to know the same things and the same people that you do. So therefore, you need to get out of your comfort zone and go meet people who are different. They work in different companies, they work in different industries, you don't know them very well, because to the extent that you interact with people who you are not closely tied to, you are much more likely to learn non-redundant information, and you're more likely to meet new people. So you need to get out of your comfort zone and try to, meet people. So I still remember some years ago, there was a group of women who sat in my power class. 3 women all sat together. And every Monday morning, I would say, who did you hang out with the weekend? And after a while, it became kind of a joke. They'd laugh and say, well, we hung out with our friends. And I would ask them, if you always hang out with your current friends, how do you make new friends? And I think that's, I've had, so if you're going to expand your circle of influence, if you're going to expand the range of people from whom you can learn, you need to reach out in ways that you're not necessarily comfortable with.
Mm. Pushing yourself outside your comfort zone.
Yeah.
In probably all of this, branding, getting out of your own way, acting and speaking with power, as well as networking. It's and you and I have talked about this before, and you shared this with me. It's important to push yourself outside your comfort zone to get to that next level in your career.
Yep. And I would say, AJ, I mean, if you think about this, if you go to a personal trainer, over time, the personal trainer is going to make the weights heavier. If you go to a tennis coach or a golf coach or any kind of a coach for any kind of athletic thing, they are going to try to get you to do, you're going to go to a golf coach or whatever. They're going to try to have you do things that you're not comfortable with doing because that's how you get better. If you always do what you're comfortable with, you'll never improve your performance.
Perfect analogy. Perfect. It's if anyone again has any hesitation towards using these rules or the other rules in the book, I found it useful. For example, in branding, that to think about my nieces and nephew, things that the 5 of them that I want to do things for financially in terms of their education, in terms of their life and investing in them. And every time I'm afraid to put out my personal brand, I think about them. And if I don't do it, I'm not going to be able to do the things I want to do for them in their life. So find somebody in your life, a family member, your team at work, whoever it is, right? And think about if I don't network more, if I don't brand myself better, if I don't act and speak with power better, if I don't get out of my own way, there's no way I'm going to be able to be useful to them as useful to them as I could be. Um, I think that helps a lot. Anyone who's got hesitation, and that helped me at least a lot. Also, I would say um, there was something there in terms of networking I was thinking about. Well, networking is often something that makes people uncomfortable. It feels dirty or self-serving. And the way Jeffrey teaches it is, and this is how I also think about networking. Just go out there and be kind and useful to people. Go out there and be kind, meet people, be kind and useful, and then see what happens from there at that point. What are your thoughts on that, Jeffrey?
I think that's right. I think the principle of I think networking is around generosity, finding people that, connecting people that who could be helpful to each other, I mean, basically, you're building bridges. Networking is nothing but building bridges.
Mm, oh, well said. Maybe lastly here, I just want to spotlight the work that Jeffrey's doing in terms of healthcare reform. I think it's some of the most important work in the country. And if you follow him on LinkedIn, he puts out some incredible posts on what's going on in a simple way to understand. So if you want to follow what he's doing there, go to LinkedIn and you'll get some great insight in terms of healthcare reform. Would you like to share anything about that, Jeffrey?
Well, I think my focus is on employers. Employers pay for an enormous percentage of healthcare for working age employees because most people get health benefits through their employers. And the employers have done, I think, in general, a very poor job of purchasing healthcare and to benefit their employees. They're spending a lot of money, but they're not really holding their third-party administrators, Cigna, Blue Shield, Anthem, Health, United Healthcare. They're not holding them accountable for actually delivering the healthcare that they are actually paying for and paying for the healthcare, and they're not really holding them accountable for delivering a great employee experience. So that's
Mm,
really that's it. And if they did, healthcare in this country would work much better.
mm. Well, thank you for making the complex simple. And that's in everything Jeffrey does. He makes the complex simple. He takes complex subjects like power, leadership, healthcare reform, and makes it simple for us to understand and execute on. And again, one more time, and I promise he's not paying me to endorse this book, Seven Rules of Power. It's just on my must-read list for leaders or anyone who wants to improve their career or life. Jeffrey, thanks so much for doing this. Thanks for your mentorship. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for the interview, and thanks for what you do for the world. Your work makes the world a better place, one person at a time, myself included, also on a global scale.
It's a pleasure. It's an honor to know you.
Uh, Thank you. Thank you. Likewise, sir. Looking forward to the next conversation.